3 days after I donated my liver to save my daughter's life, her phone buzzed on my nightstand. A voice message from her mother-in-law. I shouldn't have listened. But the first words froze my blood. Phase 1 complete. Now we wait for the insurance money. My name is Catherine Walsh, and I'm 58 years old. For most of my life, I've been the kind of mother who would do anything for her children. Anything. When my daughter Emma called me 6 months ago, crying so hard she could barely speak, I didn't hesitate for even a second. "Mom," she sobbed into the phone, "they found something. The doctors. They say my liver is failing." I remember exactly where I was standing when she said those words. In my kitchen, holding a cup of coffee that suddenly felt impossibly heavy in my hands. The morning sunlight was streaming through the window, making patterns on the floor, and I thought how strange it was that the world could look so beautiful while my daughter was telling me she might die. "What do you mean, failing?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady even though my heart was hammering against my ribs. "Emma, you're only 32. How is that possible?" She explained through her tears that she had a rare autoimmune condition. The doctors had caught it late, too late. Her liver was deteriorating rapidly, and she needed a transplant. Without one, she had maybe 6 months, maybe less. "I'm so scared, Mom," she whispered. And in that moment, I heard my little girl again. The same Emma who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, who cried when she scraped her knee, who held my hand on her first day of school. My baby, my only daughter. "We'll figure this out," I told her firmly, blinking back my own tears. "I promise you, sweetheart. We will figure this out." That very afternoon, I drove 3 hours to the hospital where Emma had been admitted. My son Michael met me in the waiting room. He looked exhausted, his eyes red-rimmed, his hair standing up in all directions like he'd been running his hands through it for hours. "Mom," he said, hugging me tightly. "Thank God you're here. Emma's been asking for you." I found her in a private room, looking so small and fragile in the hospital bed. Her skin had a yellowish tinge and her eyes were dull, but when she saw me, she tried to smile. "Hi, Mama," she said softly. I took her hand, careful not to disturb the IV lines. "Hi, baby. Tell me everything," rehooked the number one. But what Emma told me next wasn't just about her diagnosis. It was about the person sitting in the corner of her hospital room, watching us with calculating eyes. A person who would change everything. Emma's mother-in-law, Patricia Harrison, stood up from the uncomfortable hospital chair and extended her hand to me with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Catherine," she said warmly, "so good to finally meet you properly. Though I wish it were under better circumstances. I had met Patricia exactly twice before. Once at Emma's wedding 3 years ago, and once at a stilted holiday dinner where she'd spent the entire time talking about her country club and her volunteer work with various charities. She was one of those women who wore her wealth like armor. Perfectly highlighted blonde hair, designer clothes that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment, and jewelry that caught the light every time she moved her hands. "Patricia," I replied, shaking her hand briefly. Something about her unnerved me, though I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was. Maybe it was the way she seemed to be evaluating me, cataloging my worn jeans and simple sweater, mentally calculating my net worth. "I've been staying with Emma and David," Patricia explained, settling back into her chair like she owned the place. "Of course, when we heard about Emma's condition, I immediately closed up my house in the Hamptons and came straight here. Family comes first, after all." David, my son-in-law, nodded gratefully. "Mom's been incredible, Catherine. She's been here every day, managing Emma's care, talking to the doctors, making sure Emma has everything she needs." I felt a flash of something. Jealousy? Resentment? At the way he called her mom so easily. But I pushed it down. This wasn't about me. This was about Emma. "That's very kind of you," I said to Patricia, meaning it. Whatever my feelings about her, if she was helping my daughter, I was grateful. "Oh, it's nothing." Patricia waved her hand dismissively. "Though I must say the medical bills are already quite staggering. Thank goodness David has excellent insurance through his job at the firm." There it was, the subtle mention of money. The reminder that her son had provided well for Emma. that they moved in circles I could never afford to enter. I bit my tongue and turned back to Emma. "Tell me about the transplant," I said. "What do the doctors say?" Emma's eyes filled with tears. "I need a living donor, Mom. The waiting list for a deceased donor is years long, and I don't have years. I need someone who's a match, who's healthy enough to donate, and who's willing to go through major surgery." My heart clenched. "Have you been tested? David, your brother?" "David isn't a match," Emma said quietly. "We found out yesterday." "And Michael?" "Michael has 2 young kids, Mom. I can't ask him to risk his life when he has children depending on him." I didn't even hesitate. "Test me." "Mom, test me," I repeated firmly. "Today, right now. Whatever needs to happen." Patricia leaned forward slightly. "Catherine, that's very noble of you, but do you understand what you're offering? A liver donation is major surgery. There are significant risks, especially for someone your age." She paused delicately. "What are you, 60? 58, I said coolly. "And yes, I understand the risks. I also understand that Emma is my daughter, and I would do anything to save her life." Rehook number 2. What I didn't understand then was that Patricia had already set her plan in motion. A plan that involved my sacrifice, my daughter's life, and a life insurance policy I didn't even know existed. The testing process took a week. A week of blood draws, scans, psychological evaluations, and meetings with more doctors than I could count. They tested my liver function, my heart, my lungs. They asked me 1,000 questions about my motivations, my understanding of the risks, my support system at home. Through it all, Patricia was there. Always hovering, always asking questions, always taking notes in a little leather-bound notebook. "I just want to make sure we have all the information," she'd say with that smile. For Emma's sake. David seemed grateful for his mother's involvement. "Mom's so organized," he told me one afternoon in the hospital cafeteria. "She's been keeping track of all the medical details, all the costs. It's incredibly helpful." I noticed he called his mother Mom, but never called me anything at all. Just Catherine, like I was a distant acquaintance rather than his wife's mother. But again, I pushed down my feelings. This wasn't about ego or relationships. This was about saving Emma. Finally, the results came back. I was sitting in Dr. Harrison's office, no relation to Patricia, just an unfortunate coincidence, when he delivered the news. "You're a perfect match," he said, smiling. "Your liver function is excellent. Your overall health is good. From a medical standpoint, you're an ideal donor." I felt tears of relief streaming down my face. "When can we do it?" "Let's schedule it for 3 weeks from now. That gives us time to prepare, and it gives you time to get your affairs in order, make arrangements for your recovery." I called Emma immediately. She burst into tears when I told her. "Mom, are you sure? Are you absolutely sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," I told her honestly. "You're going to be okay, sweetheart. We're going to get through this together." That evening, Patricia invited me to dinner at Emma and David's house. A family celebration, she called it. To thank you properly for what you're doing. Their house was beautiful, of course. A sprawling colonial in an expensive suburb, the kind of place I could never afford on my teacher's salary. Patricia had cooked, or more likely had someone cook for her, an elaborate meal. Prime rib, roasted vegetables, an expensive wine I'd never heard of. "A toast," Patricia said, raising her glass, to Catherine for her incredible sacrifice. "Emma is so fortunate to have a mother like you." There was something in her tone, something I couldn't quite identify. It wasn't quite sincerity, but it wasn't quite mockery either. It was something else, something calculated. Rehook the 3. But I was about to find out exactly what Patricia had been calculating. And it would make everything I thought I knew about my daughter's marriage come crashing down. Over dinner, Patricia dominated the conversation. She talked about the surgery, the recovery timeline, the follow-up care Emma would need. She'd clearly done extensive research, or at least wanted us to think she had. "I've been reading about the financial implications," Patricia said, delicately cutting her prime rib. "Living donor transplants are expensive, even with good insurance. David, have you checked what your policy covers? David shifted uncomfortably. Most of it, Mom, but there will be out-of-pocket costs. I've been meaning to talk to Catherine about— Oh, don't worry about that, I interrupted. I have some savings. I can cover my portion of the medical bills. Patricia's eyes sharpened. Savings? How much are we talking? The question was so blunt, so inappropriate, that I actually laughed. I'm sorry? I'm just trying to understand the full financial picture, Patricia said smoothly. For planning purposes. These things can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Do you have life insurance, Catherine? The question hung in the air like something poisonous. Emma looked mortified. David suddenly found his plate fascinating. Mom, Emma said quietly, that's not— I'm just being practical, dear, Patricia said, patting Emma's hand. Someone has to think about these things. I set down my fork carefully. I have a small life insurance policy through my school district. Why? Oh, no reason, Patricia said airily. I just like to make sure all the bases are covered, in case anything goes wrong with the surgery. Nothing's going to go wrong, I said firmly. But a cold feeling had settled in my stomach. The rest of dinner was awkward. Patricia kept steering the conversation back to finances, to insurance, to what would happen in the worst-case scenario. Emma looked increasingly upset. David just sat there saying nothing, letting his mother push and probe. When I left that night, Emma walked me to my car. She hugged me tightly, and I could feel her trembling. I'm so sorry about Patricia, she whispered. She means well, but sometimes she's just— a lot. It's okay, baby, I assured her, even though it wasn't. I understand. She's worried about you, that's all. But as I drove home, Patricia's questions kept circling in my mind. Why was she so interested in my life insurance? Why did she keep bringing up worst-case scenarios? What was she planning? Rehook them or for? I was about to find out. But first, I had to survive the surgery itself. And that was when things started to go terribly, terribly wrong. The 3 weeks before the surgery passed in a blur. I took a leave of absence from my teaching job, arranged for someone to look. After my house went through endless preoperative appointments, Emma's condition was deteriorating rapidly. By the second week, she could barely get out of bed. Her skin was the color of old paper, and her eyes had sunk deep into her face. Hold on, baby, I whispered to her during one of my visits, holding her hand as she drifted in and out of sleep. Just a few more days. Patricia was always there, always watching, always writing in that little notebook. She'd taken over Emma's medical care completely, talking to doctors, reviewing treatment plans, managing medications. David seemed grateful to let his mother handle everything. I don't know what we'd do without you, Mom, he told Patricia constantly. And every time he said it, I felt a little smaller, a little more invisible. Michael, my son, pulled me aside one afternoon. Mom, are you sure about this? The surgery is really risky. I'm sure, I told him. But what if something happens to you? Have you thought about that? Have you updated your will, your insurance? I frowned. Why does everyone keep asking me about insurance? Michael looked uncomfortable. I don't know. Patricia mentioned something about it to me. She said she was worried about you, about what would happen to Emma if the surgery went wrong. A warning bell rang in my mind, but I ignored it. I was probably just being paranoid. Patricia was just being thorough. She wanted to make sure everyone was protected. That was all. The night before the surgery, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Emma, thinking about how she used to climb trees as a little girl, fearless and wild. How she'd wanted to be an astronaut, then a doctor, then a teacher like me. How proud I was when she got married, how happy she'd seemed in her white dress, smiling up at David like he was her entire world. I thought about how I'd do anything, absolutely anything, to give her a chance at that life. To see her healthy again, to see her have children of her own someday. Whatever the risks, whatever the cost, it was worth it. The surgery was scheduled for 6 a.m. I arrived at the hospital at 4:30, my stomach churning with nerves. Emma was already there, being prepped in the room next to mine. We squeezed hands through the gap between our beds. "I love you, Mom," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I love you too, baby," I whispered back. "I'll see you on the other side." Patricia appeared in the doorway, immaculate even at this ungodly hour. "They're almost ready for you," she said to me. Then, more quietly, "I hope you've said your goodbyes, just in case." The words sent ice down my spine, but before I could respond, the nurses were wheeling me toward the operating room. The last thing I remember before the anesthesia took hold was Dr. Harrison's kind face above me, his eyes crinkling with a reassuring smile. "You're doing a wonderful thing, Catherine. Your daughter is very lucky." Then everything went black. Rehook number 5. When I woke up, everything had changed, and I was about to discover just how much danger I'd put myself in. The first thing I felt was pain. Not just discomfort, real, searing pain that radiated from my abdomen through my entire body. I tried to move and gasped as the pain intensified. "Mrs. Walsh?" A nurse's face swam into view. "Don't try to move yet. You're in recovery. The surgery went well." "Emma?" I croaked, my throat raw from the breathing tube. "Your daughter is doing beautifully. The transplant was a success. You saved her life." I closed my eyes, tears of relief leaking from under my eyelids. It was worth it. All of it was worth it. I drifted in and out of consciousness for the next few hours. Every time I woke, there was a different nurse checking my vitals, adjusting my medications, murmuring reassurances. But no one else. No Emma, no Michael, no David. Just the nurses and the endless beeping of monitors. Finally, late in the afternoon, I woke more fully. The pain was still there but duller now, managed by whatever was dripping through my IV. I was in a private room, sunlight filtering through partially closed blinds. And there, on the nightstand beside my bed, was a phone. Emma's phone. I recognized the case, lavender with gold stars, something she'd bought on a whim during a shopping trip we'd taken together years ago. Why was Emma's phone here? As if in answer, it buzzed. A text message notification appeared on the screen, then disappeared. Then another buzz. This time, a voice message notification. I shouldn't have looked. I know I shouldn't have. It was Emma's private phone, her private messages. But something made me reach for it, my hand shaking, my IV line tangling. The phone was unlocked, and the voice message was from Patricia. My finger hovered over the play button. Every instinct told me not to listen. But something stronger, some deep primal sense that something was very wrong, made me press it. Patricia's voice filled the quiet room, smooth and pleased. Phase 1 complete. The surgery went perfectly. Catherine survived, which is good. We need her to make it through at least the first week for the life insurance to pay out properly. I've already spoken to our lawyer friend about the beneficiary change David signed last month. Emma was too out of it to notice, which is perfect. By the time anyone realizes what we've done, it will be too late. The $500,000 policy will cover everything, the medical bills, David's gambling debts, and still leave us with a comfortable cushion. I'll keep managing her care, make sure she doesn't recover too quickly. We can't have her asking questions or getting suspicious. Keep playing the devoted husband, darling. Once everything settles, we can finally get you away from that girl. She served her purpose. The phone slipped from my hands and clattered onto the nightstand. My daughter's mother-in-law had just confessed to conspiracy, to fraud, to planning my death. And Emma had no idea that the man she loved, the man she'd married, was part of it all. Rehook number 6. But the voice message wasn't the end of it. It was just the beginning. Because when I looked at Emma's phone more carefully, I found something else. Something that would change everything. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. I had to read the message again, listen to it again, make sure I'd heard what I thought I'd heard. Phase 1 complete. Like I was just a chess piece in someone's game. Catherine survived, which is good. Good? Good? Because they needed me alive. Just long enough for insurance fraud? The $500,000 policy. What policy? I had a small life insurance policy through my school district, maybe $50,000, meant to cover my funeral expenses and leave a little something for my kids. Not $500,000. My heart was pounding so hard I thought the monitors might start alarming. I looked at the IV in my arm, at the clear liquid dripping steadily into my vein. What was in there? Just pain medication and fluids? Or something else? Something to keep me from recovering too quickly? I wanted to rip the IV out. I wanted to scream. But I forced myself to stay calm, to think. If Patricia realized I'd heard the message, if she knew I was suspicious, what would she do? She'd already planned for me to die naturally from surgical complications. How hard would it be to make that happen a little sooner? With trembling fingers, I scrolled through Emma's phone. Text messages with Patricia, going back months. My stomach turned as I read them. Patricia, how is Catherine's health? Any major medical issues we should know about? Emma, Mom's fine. Why? Patricia, just curious, darling. You know how I worry about family. That was from 4 months ago, before Emma even got sick. I scrolled further. Another exchange, 2 weeks before Emma's diagnosis. Patricia, David mentioned Catherine doesn't have much in savings. Is that true? Emma, I mean, she's a teacher. She gets by. Why? Patricia, no reason. Just thinking about the future, about making sure everyone's taken care of. And then, the message that made my blood run cold, from 3 months ago. Patricia, I found a wonderful specialist for second opinions. Dr. Reeves at Metropolitan Hospital. Very thorough, very discreet. I'd like to make Emma an appointment. David. Why? Emma's fine, Patricia. Just a routine checkup, darling. You know how I worry. I thought back to Emma's diagnosis. How sudden it had been. How she'd gone from perfectly healthy to liver failure in a matter of weeks. The rare autoimmune condition that the doctors said they'd caught late. What if they hadn't caught it late? What if it had been induced? No, I was being paranoid. Patricia might be a greedy, manipulative woman, but she wouldn't actually poison her own daughter-in-law. Would she? I scrolled further back, my hands shaking worse than ever. And then I found it. An email Patricia had forwarded to David 6 months ago. With just 3 words. Read this carefully. The email was from an anonymous sender, with a detailed breakdown of how certain medications, when administered in small doses over time, could cause liver damage that looked exactly like autoimmune disease. The symptoms. The progression. The treatment that would be ineffective because the underlying cause wasn't actually autoimmune. And at the bottom, impossible to detect unless specifically tested for. By the time anyone thinks to look, it's too late. Perfect for your needs. I was going to be sick. I actually thought I might vomit right there in my hospital bed. Patricia hadn't just planned to commit insurance fraud by letting me die. She'd systematically poisoned my daughter to create a situation where I would have to donate my liver, where I would become the solution to a problem she'd deliberately created. Rehook Thupper 7. And I was lying there, helpless, with an IV in my arm, and no way to know if what was dripping into my veins was medicine or poison. The nurse came in to check on me, and I nearly jumped out of my skin. Mrs. Walsh, are you all right? Your heart rate spiked. I'm fine, I lied, trying to steady my breathing. Just some pain. Can you check my IV? I think something's wrong with it. The nurse examined it carefully. It looks fine to me. Is it hurting? A little, I said, which wasn't entirely a lie. My whole body hurt. Could Could you tell me exactly what's in it? She smiled kindly. Of course. Standard post-operative cocktail. Saline, pain medication, antibiotics, some vitamins. Nothing unusual. Your surgeon prescribed it personally, Dr. Harrison. Could I trust him? Or was he part of this too? Has anyone else been in here? I asked. To check on me? Let me see. She consulted a chart. Looks like Mrs. Harrison, Patricia Harrison, came by about 2 hours ago while you were sleeping. She's listed as your emergency contact, so we let her in. She sat with you for a bit, checked your charts. She seemed very concerned about you. My blood ran cold. Patricia had been in here while I was unconscious. She'd checked my charts. Had she done something to my IV? Added something? I need to speak to my doctor, I said urgently. Right now, please, the nurse frowned. Dr. Harrison is in surgery right now, but I can page him to come see you as soon as he's free. Is something wrong? Everything. Everything was wrong. But I couldn't tell her that. Not yet. Not until I knew who I could trust. Just some concerns about my recovery, I said weakly. I'll wait. When the nurse left, I carefully reached up and turned off my IV. The pain immediately got worse, but I didn't care. I wasn't letting another drop of whatever was in that bag enter my body until I knew exactly what it was. I looked at Emma's phone again. Scrolling through messages felt like falling down a rabbit hole into hell. More evidence, more planning, more cold-blooded calculation. A text from Patricia to David from 2 weeks ago. Catherine signed all the consent forms. She didn't even read them carefully, just like I said. The life insurance beneficiary change is buried in the fine print. Legal reviewed it, completely ironclad. Even if anyone questions it later, it's her signature, her decision. We're covered. I hadn't signed anything about changing life insurance beneficiaries. But then I remembered. All those forms at the hospital, stack after stack of papers about surgical consent, medical release, financial responsibility. Patricia had been there, helpfully pointing out where to sign, where to initial, telling me, it's just standard hospital bureaucracy. I'd trusted her. I'd signed without reading, and apparently, buried in those documents, was something that made David the beneficiary of a life insurance policy I didn't even know I had. Rehook number 8. But I was about to discover that the life insurance policy was just the tip of the iceberg. Because when I dug deeper into Emma's phone, I found proof that this plan had been years in the making. There was a folder on Emma's phone labeled Mom Stuff. I assumed it was pictures and messages about Patricia. But when I opened it, I found something else entirely. Documents. Dozens of scanned documents. My tax returns from the last 5 years. Bank statements. Investment accounts I'd forgotten I had. Small IRAs from jobs decades ago. A modest 401k from my years teaching. The deed to my house, which was finally paid off after 30 years of mortgage payments. Patricia had been collecting information about my finances for years, systematically cataloging everything I owned, everything I was worth. There was even a spreadsheet breaking it all down. House value, $285,000 retirement accounts, $73,000 life insurance, school district, $50,000 life insurance, new policy, $500,000. That last line made me dizzy. New policy? What new policy? I scrolled to the attached document. It was a life insurance application in my name, dated 6 months ago, for a $500,000 policy through a company I'd never heard of. The signature looked exactly like mine, but I had never signed it. Forgery. They'd forged my signature on a life insurance application. But how had they gotten away with it? Don't insurance companies verify these things? Do medical exams? Then I saw another document, a medical examination report from Dr. Samuel Reeves, declaring that I was in excellent health, perfect condition for insurance, no risk factors. The exam was supposedly conducted at Metropolitan Hospital. Metropolitan Hospital. The same place Patricia had sent Emma for her second opinion. The same Dr. Reeves. I felt like I was piecing together a conspiracy that was so much bigger than I'd imagined. Patricia hadn't just decided to commit insurance fraud on a whim. She'd been planning this for months, maybe years. Setting up fake doctors, forging documents, systematically poisoning Emma to create the situation she needed. But why? Why go to all this trouble? What did Patricia need $500,000 so badly for? I kept scrolling. And then I found the answer, a PDF of a legal document. Notice of foreclosure. Patricia's house, the mansion in the Hamptons she was always bragging about, was being foreclosed on. She was millions of dollars in debt, credit cards maxed out, bank accounts overdrawn, another document, final notice, country club membership. She owed $5,000 in unpaid dues, and another IRS notice tax lien. She owed $850,000 in back taxes. Patricia Harrison, the wealthy society matron, was completely broke, and she'd decided that I was going to be her salvation. The door to my room opened suddenly, and I barely had time to hide Emma's phone under my blanket before Patricia herself walked in, carrying a vase of expensive-looking flowers. "Catherine," she said brightly, "you're awake! How are you feeling?" I looked at her, this woman who had poisoned my daughter, forged my signature, and planned my death, and somehow managed to smile. "I'm fine," I said. "Just fine. Wonderful. I brought you some flowers. Aren't they beautiful?" She set them on the windowsill, then turned back to me with that calculating smile. "Emma is doing wonderfully, by the way. The transplant was a complete success. You saved her life, Catherine. You're a hero." She walked closer to my bed and I saw her eyes flick to the IV machine. She noticed immediately that it had been turned off. "Oh, Catherine, your IV isn't running. Let me fix that for you." She reached for the control. "Don't touch it," I said sharply. She froze, her hand in midair. Something flickered in her eyes. Surprise? Anger? Fear? "I'm sorry?" she said, her voice still pleasant but with an edge now. I said, "Don't touch it." I met her gaze steadily. "I'll wait for the nurse to check it. Catherine, you need your medication. You need your fluids. You're going to dehydrate." "I'll take my chances." We stared at each other for a long moment. The mask of concern on her face was slipping, showing something colder underneath. "You're acting very strangely," Patricia said carefully. "Are you sure you're feeling all right? Sometimes anesthesia can cause confusion, paranoia." "I'm not confused," I interrupted. "And I'm not paranoid. I'm just being careful about what goes into my body." Another long silence. I could practically see her mind working, trying to figure out what I knew, what I suspected. "Well," she said finally, forcing her smile back into place, "I'll let you rest. But really, Catherine, you should let the nurses manage your care. They know what they're doing." She turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Oh, and Catherine, I'll need Emma's phone back. She's been asking for it." My heart stopped. "I don't have Emma's phone." Patricia's eyes swept the room and landed on the slight bulge under my blanket where I'd hidden it. "Really?" she said softly. "That's funny. I could have sworn I saw it on your nightstand earlier." She took a step toward the bed. I tensed, my hand moving instinctively toward the nurse call button. Patricia saw the movement and smiled that cold smile again. "You know, Catherine, I really hope you recover quickly from this surgery. It would be such a shame if there were complications. Such a terrible shame." And then she left, closing the door softly behind her. My hands were shaking again. I grabbed Emma's phone and sent a text to Michael. "Come to the hospital right now. Don't tell anyone. Bring a lawyer. It's an emergency." Then I took pictures of everything on Emma's phone. Every document, every text message, every piece of evidence. I emailed them all to myself, to Michael, to 3 different email accounts, making sure that even if Patricia somehow got the phone back, the evidence would still exist. And then I waited, my hand on the nurse call button, for whatever came next, because I knew one thing for certain. Patricia Harrison wasn't going to let me leave this hospital alive. Not now that she knew I was suspicious. Not when I was the only thing standing between her and $500,000. The question was, could I survive long enough to expose her? Final cliffhanger, and then my door opened again. But this time it wasn't Patricia who walked in. It was David, my son-in-law. And he was holding something in his hand. Something that made my blood run cold. David closed the door quietly behind him and locked it. The click of the lock seemed impossibly loud in the silent room. "Catherine," he said softly, almost sadly, "I really wish you hadn't found Emma's phone." He moved closer to the bed, and I saw what he was holding, a syringe filled with clear liquid. "What is that?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Potassium chloride," he said matter-of-factly. "Injected directly into an IV, it causes cardiac arrest. Very quick, usually painless, and in someone who just had major surgery, completely believable. Just a tragic complication. No one will question it. You won't get away with this," I said, my hand moving toward the nurse call button. David moved faster, grabbing my wrist. "Don't. Please don't make this harder than it has to be. David, I'm Emma's mother. She loves me. How can you do this to her?" Something flickered across his face. Guilt? Regret? But then it hardened again. "Emma will understand eventually. She'll see that we did what we had to do. My gambling debts, my mother's financial problems. We were drowning, Catherine. Completely drowning. And you were the life raft. By poisoning your wife? By planning to murder me?" "We didn't plan to murder you," David said, as if that made it better. We just needed you to donate your liver and then not recover. That's all. Natural complications. It happens all the time with organ donation. That's murder, David. That's premeditated murder. It's survival," he corrected. "And you've backed us into a corner now. My mother told me you found the evidence. That you've been snooping through Emma's phone. We can't let you expose everything. We can't go to prison." He moved closer with the syringe. I pressed the nurse call button frantically, but David must have disconnected it. Nothing happened. No alarm, no notification to the nurse's station. Nothing. "I'm sorry," David said, and he actually sounded like he meant it. "I really am. You seem like a nice woman. But my wife, my mother, they need me. And I need that insurance money." He reached for my IV port, and I did the only thing I could think of. I screamed. As loud as I could, I screamed for help. David's hand clamped over my mouth. "Stop it! Stop it!" But I kept screaming against his hand, thrashing in the bed, ignoring the searing pain in my abdomen where they'd removed part of my liver. The door handle rattled. Someone was trying to get in. David's eyes went wide with panic. He looked at the locked door, at me, at the syringe in his hand. "I'm sorry," he said again. And then he injected the contents of the syringe directly into my IV line. The last thing I heard before the darkness took me was the sound of the door being forced open. Security guards shouting, David yelling something about it being a misunderstanding. And then nothing. When I woke up, I genuinely thought I was dead. The room was too bright, too white, and there was a beeping sound that seemed to come from very far away. But then I felt pain, that same post-surgical pain radiating through my body. And I knew I must still be alive. "Because I'm pretty sure heaven doesn't hurt this much." "She's waking up," a voice said, Michael's voice. I tried to open my eyes, but they felt so heavy. "Mom? Mom, can you hear me?" I managed to crack one eye open. Michael was there, leaning over my bed, his face pale and exhausted. Behind him, I could see 2 police officers standing near the door. "What?" I tried to speak, but my throat was so dry. Michael grabbed a cup of water, held the straw to my lips. "Just small sips, easy." I drank gratefully, then tried again. "What happened?" "You're in the ICU," Michael explained. "David tried to inject you with potassium chloride, but Dr. Harrison had already removed your IV. He was suspicious about some irregularities in your chart. The substance went into an empty line. It didn't actually enter your bloodstream." I blinked, trying to process this. "Dr. Harrison saved me?" "He did. Apparently, he noticed that your labs were off, that someone had been accessing your medical records inappropriately. He flagged it to hospital security, and they were already on their way to check on you when they heard you screaming." "David?" "In custody. So is Patricia." "Mom, you need to know. Emma had no idea about any of it. She's devastated." Tears leaked from my eyes. "Emma, she wants to see you. But the doctors said you need to stabilize first." You've been unconscious for 2 days. We thought—" His voice broke. "We thought we were going to lose you." One of the police officers stepped forward. "Mrs. Walsh, I'm Detective Rodriguez. When you're feeling up to it, we need to get your statement. We've already obtained search warrants for Patricia Harrison's residence and David's phone records. Based on the evidence you collected, we believe we can prosecute them for attempted murder, insurance fraud, forgery, and potentially for poisoning your daughter." "Emma," I said again. "Is she okay?" "The liver transplant was successful," Michael said, "but the doctors found traces of arsenic in her blood. Patricia had been poisoning her slowly for months, just like you suspected. They're treating her now. She's going to be okay, Mom. Thanks to you." I closed my eyes, overwhelmed. Emma was alive. I was alive. Patricia and David were in custody. "There's more," Michael said gently. "The police found evidence that Patricia had done this before. To her first husband 12 years ago, he supposedly died of a heart attack, but they're exhuming his body now. There may be other victims, a serial killer. I'd almost become the victim of a serial killer." "I want to see Emma," I said. "Soon," Michael promised. "As soon as you're strong enough." It took a week before I was stable enough to be moved to a regular room. Another week before I could walk without feeling like my insides were going to fall out. But finally, they wheeled Emma into my room. She looked better, some color back in her cheeks, some light back in her eyes. But when she saw me, she burst into tears. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed, grabbing my hand. "I'm so sorry. I had no idea. I didn't know what David was planning, what Patricia was doing. I would never—" "I know, baby," I said, holding her as tightly as I could without disturbing either of our IVs. "I know you didn't know." "She poisoned me," Emma whispered. "My own mother-in-law poisoned me. And David was going to kill you. My husband was going to murder my mother." "Ex-husband," I corrected gently. "I assume you're filing for divorce?" "The papers were filed yesterday," Emma said. "I never want to see him again. Ever." We sat together for a long time, just holding each other, crying, trying to process everything that had happened. "I don't understand," Emma finally said. "How did you figure it out?" I told her about finding her phone, about the voice message, about all the evidence I'd discovered, about David coming into my room with the syringe. "If Dr. Harrison hadn't been suspicious," I said, "if he hadn't removed my IV, I'd be dead right now." Emma's face crumpled. "This is all my fault? I married him. I brought Patricia into our lives. Stop," I said firmly. "This is not your fault. You were a victim too. We both were. But I should have seen the signs. Should have questioned why Patricia was so involved, so interested in you, so focused on finances. Sociopaths are good at hiding who they really are," I said. "That's what makes them dangerous." The trial took 8 months. Patricia and David were charged with attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, forgery, and in Patricia's case, the murder of her first husband. The exhumation had revealed high levels of arsenic in his remains. I testified. Emma testified. Dr. Harrison testified about the medical irregularities he'd noticed. The prosecutors presented all the evidence I'd photographed from Emma's phone, plus additional evidence found during the search warrants. Patricia never showed any remorse. She sat in the courtroom with perfect posture, perfectly styled hair, looking like she was attending a charity luncheon rather than a murder trial. Even when the guilty verdicts were read, she barely blinked. David, on the other hand, broke down completely. He apologized to Emma, to me, to the court. He claimed he'd been manipulated by his mother, that he'd never meant for things to go so far. The jury didn't care. Patricia got life without parole. David got 25 years, justice, I suppose. Though it didn't erase what had happened, didn't undo the trauma, didn't give back the innocence Emma and I had lost. A year later, Emma and I were having coffee in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd been standing when she called to tell me about her diagnosis. The morning light was making patterns on the floor again, and this time, the beauty didn't seem mocking. It seemed like a gift. Emma was healthy now, the transplant a complete success. She'd moved back in with me for a while, needing time to heal, to process, to figure out who she was outside of the manipulation she'd endured. "I got a job offer," she said, stirring her coffee, "at a nonprofit that helps victims of family violence." "That's wonderful, honey." "I think I need to do it," she continued. "Need to turn what happened to us into something positive. Help other people recognize the warning signs, get out of dangerous situations." "You'll be amazing at it," I said honestly. She smiled, but it was a sad smile. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't found my phone? If you hadn't seen that voice message?" "Every day," I admitted. "I think about how close we came. How easily Patricia could have gotten away with it." "The detective told me they found 4 other potential victims," Emma said quietly. 4 other people Patricia had targeted over the years. Some of them died under mysterious circumstances. Some of them disappeared. All of them had life insurance policies with Patricia or her associates as beneficiaries. "She was a predator," I said. "A very sophisticated predator. And I married her son." Emma's voice broke. "I brought that evil into our family." "No," I said firmly, taking her hand. "You fell in love with someone who lied to you. You couldn't have known. Even I didn't see it at first, and I was suspicious of Patricia from the beginning." "Do you think I'll ever be able to trust someone again?" Emma asked. "Fall in love again?" "I think so," I said. "It will take time. Probably therapy. But yes, I think you will. You're stronger than you know, Emma." She squeezed my hand. "I get that from you. I still teach at the same school. My students don't know about what happened, about how close I came to being murdered by my daughter's in-laws. They just know that I took a semester off for medical reasons and came back thinner, quieter, with a long scar across my abdomen that I hide under loose clothes. Sometimes, in class, I'll see a student who seems too eager to please, too accommodating, too willing to trust, and I'll pull them aside and tell them gently that it's okay to question people's motives, that it's okay to protect yourself. That kindness should never come at the cost of your own safety. I don't tell them why I know this, but I hope they hear the truth in my voice. Emma is thriving at her new job. She's helping people every day, turning her trauma into purpose. She's even started dating again. A kind, patient man who knows her story and loves her anyway. As for me, I'm more careful now. I read every document I sign. I question generous offers. I trust my instincts when something feels wrong. And I keep Emma's old phone, with all those incriminating messages, locked in a safe deposit box. Evidence of the evil that can hide behind a smile. Proof that sometimes the people who seem the most concerned about you are actually planning your death. The doctors say I'm lucky to be alive. That the surgery, the stress, the attempted poisoning, any one of those things could have killed me. But I survived all of them. Sometimes I wonder if it was luck. Or if it was something else. Stubbornness, maybe. Or just a mother's refusal to die while her daughter still needed her. Because that's the thing about mothers. We'll do anything for our children. Anything. Even when it almost costs us everything. The story you've just heard has been changed in names and places to protect the identity of the people involved. We are not telling this to judge, but with the hope that someone listens and stops to reflect. How many mothers are suffering in silence, manipulated by people they trust? I truly wonder, if you were in my place, what would you have done? Would you have donated your liver without questioning? Would you have trusted Patricia? Or would you have seen the warning signs earlier? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever encountered someone who seemed perfect on the surface but had dark intentions underneath? How did you protect yourself? Every story is like a candle that can light the way for someone else. Share your experiences. You might save someone's life. God bless, and remember, trust your instincts. They exist for a reason.